名著选 1. God Save the Queen, British National Anthem. God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen, send her victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over us. God save the Queen. Overthrow our God arise, scatter our enemies, and make them fall. Confound their naval stress, confuse their politics. On you our hopes we feast. God save the Queen. Not in this land alone, but be God's mercies known from shore to shore. Lord, make the nation see that men should brothers be, and form one family, the wide world o'er. From every latent foe, from the assassin's brow. God save the Queen. All her like army stand, for Britain's sake defend. Our mother, prince, and friend. God save the Queen. Thy choicest gift in store, on her be pleased to pour. Long may she reign, may she defend our laws, and ever give us cause to sing with heart and voice. God save the Queen. True, the Star-Spangled Banner, USA National Anthem by Francis Scott Key. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light, while so proudly we hail at the twilight stars screaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars to the perilous fight. Our ramparts we watch were so grandly streaming, and the rockets would glare and bombs bursting in air, gave push through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that Star-Spangled Banner yet wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. On the shore dimming scenes through the mists of the deep, where the foe's hearty host in just silence reposes, while its light which the breeze o'er the towering steep, and its peacefully blows, now conceals, now discloses, now it catches the gleam of the morning first beam, in full glory reflected, now shines on the stream. 'Tis the Star-Spangled Banner, O long may it wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. And where is that band who so vauntingly swore that the havoc of war and the battle's confusion, a home and a country, should leave us no more? Their blood has wiped out their foul footsteps' pollution. No refuge could save the highly enslaved from the terrors of the fights of the gloom of the grave. And the Star-Spangled Banner in triumph does wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, thus be it ever when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the world's desolation. But with victory and peace may the heaven rescue them. Praise the power that hath made and preserved us the nation. Then conquer we must, for our cause it is trust, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the Star-Spangled Banner forever shall wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. 3. Apollo the musician, mistress of Greece and Rome. It is said that on a certain occasion, Pan had the temerity to compare his music with that of Apollo, and to challenge the god of the lyre to a trial of skill. The challenge was accepted, and tomorrow the mountain god was chosen umpire. The senior took his seat and cleared away the trees from his ears to listen. At a given signal, Pan blew on his pipes, and with his rustic melody gave great satisfaction to himself and his faithful follower-minders who happened to be present. Then tomorrow turned his head toward the sun god, and all his tree turned with him. Apollo rose his broad wheat with pronouncing roar, while his roar of turning purple swept the ground. In his left hand he held a lyre, and with his right hand struck the strings. Tomorrow at once awarded the victory to the lyric god, and all but Midas acquiesced in the judgment. He dissented and questioned the justice of the award. Apollo promptly transformed his disparate pair of ears into lords of an ass. King Midas tried to hide his motion under an ample turban, but his hairdresser found it too much for his discretion to keep such a secret. He dug a hole in the ground, and stooping down, whispered the story and covered it up. But the thick battle breeze burning up in the meadow began whispering the story, and has continued to do so from that day to this, every time the breeze passes over the place. For the sun-garden sunflower, mistress of Greece and Rome, Katie was a water nymph, and in love with Apollo, who made her no return, so she pined away, sitting all day long upon the cruel ground, with her unbound tresses streaming over her shoulders. 9 days she sat, and tasted neither food nor drink. Her own tears and naturally through her only food, she gazed on the sun when he rose, and as he passed through his daily course to his setting. She saw no other objects, her face turned constantly on him. At last they say her limbs rooted in the ground, her face became a flower which turns on its stem, so as always to face the sun throughout its daily course, for it retained to that extent the feeling of a nymph from whom it sprang. 5. Injustice by Plato, but in reality justice was such as we were describing, being concerned, however, not with the outward man, but with the inward, which is the true self and concernment of man. and concernment of man for the just man does not permit the several elements within him to interfere with one another or any of them to do the work of others. He sets in order his own inner life and is his own master and his own law and at peace with himself. And when he has bound together the three principles within him, which may be compared to the higher, lower, and middle notes of the scale, and the intermediate intervals, when he has bound all this together, and is no longer many, but has become one, entirely temperate and perfectly adjusted in nature, then he proceeds to act if he has to act, whether in the matter of property, or in the treatment of the body, or in some affair, politics, or private business, always thinking and calling that which preserves and corroborates with its harmonious condition, just and good action, and the knowledge which presides over it, wisdom, and that which at any time impair this condition, he will call unjust action, and the opinion which presides over its ignorance. 6. On self-discipline by Aristotle. Virtue then is of two kinds, intellectual and moral. Intellectual virtue springs from and grows from teaching, and therefore needs experience and time. Moral virtue comes from habits. They are in us neither by nature nor in despite of nature, but we are furnished by nature with a capacity for receiving them, and we develop them through habits. These virtues we acquire by first exercising them, as in the case of other arts. Whatever we learn to do, we learn by actually doing it. Men come to be builders, for instance, by building, and harp players by playing the harp. In the same way, by doing just acts, we come to be just. By doing self-control acts, we come to be self-controlled, and by doing brave acts, we become brave. How we act in our relations with other people makes us just or unjust. How we face dangerous situations, either accustoming ourselves to fear or confidence, makes us brave or cowardly. Occasions of lust and anger are similar. Some people become self-controlled and patient from their conduct in such situations, and others uncontrolled and passionate. In a word, that activities produce similar dispositions. Therefore, we must give a certain character to our activities. In short, the habits we form from childhood make no small difference, but rather they make all the difference. Moral virtue is a means that lies between two vices, one of excess and the other of deficiency, and it attains both in feelings and actions. So it is hard to be good, for surely it is hard in each instant to find the mean, just as it is difficult to find the center of a circle. It is easy to get angry or to spend money. Anyone can do that, but to act the right way toward the right person, in due proportion at the right time, for the right reason and in the right manner, this is not easy, and not everyone can do it. 7. On friendship by Aristotle. As the motive to friendship differ in kind, so do the respective feelings and friendships. The species then of friendship are three, in number equal to the objects of it. Since in the light of each there may be mutual affection, mutually known, now they who have friendship for one another decide one another's good according to the motive of their friendship. Accordingly, they whose motive is utility have no friendship for one another really, but only in so far as some good arises to them from one another, and them whose motive is pleasure are in that case, I mean, they have friendship for men of easy pleasantry, not because they are given character, but because they are pleasant to themselves. Such friendships are of course very liable to dissolution if the parties do not continue alike. I mean that the others cease to have any friendship, for then when they are no longer pleasurable or useful, that then is perfect friendship, which subsists between those who are good, and whose similarity consists in their goodness. For these men wish one another's good in similar ways, in so far as they are good, and good they are in themselves. And those are specially friends who wish good to their friends for their sakes, because they feel thus toward them on their own account, and not as a mere matter of result. So the friendship between these men continue to subsist so long as they are good, and goodness we know has in its principle permanent. Rare it is probable friendships of this kind will be, because men of this kind are rare, besides a requisite qualification being presupposed. There is further required time and intimacy. For as the proverb says, men cannot know one another till they have eaten the requisite quantity of salt together, nor can they in fact admit one another to intimacy. Much less be friends till each has appeared to the other, and been proved to be a fit object of friendship. They who speedily commence an interchange of friendly actions may be said to wish to be friends, but they are not so unless they are also a proper object of friendship, and mutually know to be such. That is to say, a desire for friendship may arise quickly, but not friendship itself. Aids of Study by Francis Bacon. Studies serve for delight, for ornament, and for variety. The chief use for delight is in privateness and retiring, for ornament is in discourse, and for variety is in the judgment and disposition of business. For expert men can execute and perhaps judge of particulars one by one, but the general counsels and the parts and marching of affairs come best from those that are learned. Reading makes a foreman, conference a ready man, and writing an exact man. And therefore, if a man writes little, he had need have a great memory. If he confer little, he had need have a present wit. And if he read little, he had need have much cunning, to seem to know that he does not. Histories make men wise, poets witty, the mathematics subtle, natural philosophy thief, moral grave, natural and rhetoric, able to contain. A beyond studio immersed, nay, there is no stone, no impediment in the wet, but may be watched out by field studies, like a disease of the body, may have opiate exercises. Bowling is good for the storm and rains, shooting for the lungs and breast, gentle walking for the stomach, riding for the head and the leg. Night spring by reading Shakespeare, when daisies pie and violets brew, and ladies mark a sober wet, and cuckoo birds of yellow hue do paint the meadows with delight. The cuckoo land on every tree marks merriment, for thus sings he, cuckoo, 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 of world fear, unpleasing to a merry year. When shepherds pie on ocean straws, and merry larks are promised clouds, when turtles tread and rooks and doves, and maidens bleach the summer's marks, the cuckoo land on every tree marks merriment, for thus sings he, cuckoo, 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 of world fair, unpleasing to a merry year. 10. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow by reading Shakespeare. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last tolerable recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lettered fools. The way to dusty death, out our brief candle, lies but a walking shadow, a poor player, that stretch and fret his hour upon the stage, and then he's heard no more. It is a tale told by an eddy, for sound and fury signify nothing. 11. To be or not to be by reading Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and errors of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing aim them to die to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to save the end, the heart attack, and a thousand natural shocks. The flesh is heir to, 'tis a consummation, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rough. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the wisdom scorns of time? The oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the lost delay, the insolent offers, and the spurn, the patient measure of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietest make. With a bare barking, cruel father spare, to ground and sweat under a really life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country, from whose port no traveller returns, puzzles the well, and makes us swallow bears those ills we have, then fly to others that we know not of. Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is seeketh all with a pale cast of thoughts, and enterprises of great pitch and moments. With this we guard the current channel right, and lose the land of action. 12. Virtue by George Herbert. Sweet day, so cruel, so calm, so bright, the bridal of the earth and sky. The dew shall weep thy fall tonight, for thou must die. Sweet rose pursue, angry and brave, bids the watch gazer wipe his eye. The root is ever in its grave, and thou must die. Sweet spring for sweet days and roses, a box with sweet compacted die. My music shows ye have your crosses, and all must die. Only a sweet and virtuous soul, like seasoned timber, never gives, but lo, the whole world turn to cold, then chiefly lives. 13. On goodwill by many accounts, nothing can possibly be conceived in the world, or even out of it, which can be called good, without qualification, except a goodwill, intelligence with judgment, and the other talents of the mind, however they may be named, or courage, resolution, perseverance, as quality of temperament, are undoubtedly good and desirable in many respects, but this gift of nature may also become extremely bad and mischievous, if the will which is to make use of them, and which therefore constitute what is called character, is not good. It is the same with the gifts of fortune, power, riches, honor, even kills, and the general well-being and contentment, with one's condition which is called happiness, inspire pride and often presumption, if there is not a good will to correct the influence of this on the mind, and with this also to rectify, the whole principle of acting and adapt it to its end. The sight of a being who is not adorned with a single future but pure and goodwill, enjoying unbroken prosperity, can never give pleasure to an impartial, rational spectator. Thus, a goodwill appears to constitute the indispensable condition even of being worthy of happiness. A goodwill is good not because of what it performs or effects, not by its aptness for the attainment of some proposed end, but simply by virtue of the volition. That is, it is good in itself and considered by itself, is to be esteemed much higher than all that can be brought about by it, in favor of any inclination, nay, even of the sum total of all inclinations. 14. A Red, Red Rose by Robert Burns. All my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. All my love's like the melody that's really playing in tune. As fair as thou, my bunny, that's so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas can dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun. I will love thee still, my dear, with the sense of life sure wrong, and fairly well, my only love, and fairly well a while, and I will come again, my love, though it's worth 10,000 miles. 15. The Declaration of Independence. When the course when human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinion of mankind, request that they should declare the causes which impel them to a separation. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thus, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of this end, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect the safety and happiness. Prudence indeed would dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and chancing causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to rest themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw out such governments and to provide new gods for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over the state. To prove this, the facts be submitted to a candid war. In every stage of this oppression, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petition having answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people, nor have we been wanting in attention to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which will inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assemble, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for a rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and arise out to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our secret honor. 16. She walks in beauty. By George Gordon Byron. She walks in beauty like the nights of colourless skies and starry skies, and all that's best of dark and bright. Mist in her aspect and her eyes, thus marrow to that tender light, which heaven to gaudy day denies. One shed the more, one red the less, had half impaled the nameless grace, which waves in every raven tress, or softly lightens o'er her face, what thoughts windy sweet express. How pure, how dear the dwelling place, and on that cheeks and all that brow, so soft, so calm, yet eloquent, the smell that win, the tint that grow, but 12 days in goodness spent, a mind at peace with all below, the heart whose love is innocent. 17. Farewell George. By George Washington. Friends and fellow citizens, the period for a new election of a citizen to a minister, the executive government of the United States being not far distant and the time actually arrived when you thought must be employed in designating the person who is to be closed with that important trust, it appears to me proper, especially as it may conduce to a more distinct expression of the public voice, that I should now apprise you of a resolution I have formed to decline being considered among the number of those out of whom a choice is to be made. The basis of our political system is the right of the people to make and to alter the constitution of governments, but the constitution which at any time exists to change by an explicit and authentic act of the whole people is secretly obligatory upon all. The very idea of the power and the rights of the people to establish governments presupposes the duty to every individual to obey the established governments of all the disposition and habits which lead to political prosperity. Religion and morality are indispensable supports. In vain would that men claim the true pure patriotism. We should labor to subvert these great pillars of human happiness, these firmest proofs of the duties of men and citizens. The mere politician, equally with the pious man, ought to respect and to cherish them. A volume could not trace all the connection with private and public felicity. They simply be acts what is the security for property, for reputation, for life, is the sense of religion obligation, desert the oaths which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice, and let with caution indulge the supposition that morality for reputation, for life, in the sense of religion obligation, desert the oath which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice, can be maintained without religion and morality enjoin this conduct, and cannot be that good policy does not equally enjoin it. It will be worthy for reputation, for life, if the sense of religion obligation desert the oath which are the instruments of investigation in courts of justice, and thus in caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of peculiar structure, reason and respect to natural morality can prevail in exclusion of a religion principle. It is substantially true that virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular governments. The rule indeed extends with more or less force to every species of free government, who that is insincere friend to it can look with indifference upon attempts to shake the foundation of the fabric, foremost then as an abstract primary importance, institution for a general diffusion of knowledge, in proportion as the structure of governments gives forth to public opinion. It is essential that public opinion should be enlightened, observe good faith and justice to all nations, cultivate peace and harmony with all. Religion and morality enjoin this conduct, and cannot be that good policy does not equally enjoin it. It would be worthy of a free, enlightened, and at no distant period, a great nation to give to mankind the magnanimous and too novel example of a people always guided by and exalted justice and benevolence. The great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is, in extending our commercial relations, to have with them as little political connection as possible. So far as we have already formed engagements, let them be fulfilled with perfect good faith. Here let us stop. You have a set of primary interests, which to us have none or very remote relation. Why, by interweaving our destiny with that of any part of Europe, entangle our peace and prosperity in the toils of European ambition, rivalship, interest, humor, or caprice, though in reviewing the incidents of my administration, I am unconscious of intentional error. I am nevertheless too sensible of my defects not to think it probable that I may have committed many errors. Whatever they may be, I fervently beseech the Almighty to to eliminate the evils to which they may tempt. I shall also carry with me the hope that my country will never cease to view them with indulgence, and that after 45 years of my life dedicated to its service with an upright zeal, the faults of incompetence or previous will be consigned to oblivion, as myself must soon be to remissions of rest, reliance on in kindness in this as in other things, and actuated by that fervent love toward it which is so natural to a man who views in it the native soil of himself and his progenitor for several generations. I anticipate with pleasing expectation that retreats in which I promise myself to realize without alloy the sweet enjoyment of partaking, in the midst of my fellow citizens, the benign influence of good laws under free government, the ever-favored objects of my heart, and the happy reward, as I trust, of our mutual cares, labors, and dangers. 18. Ode to the West Wind by Percy Bysshe Shelley. If I were death leaf thou mightest spare, if I were swift cloud to fly with thee, a waste to pen beneath thy power, and sure the impulse of thy strength only less free than thou or uncontrollable, if even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, as then when to outstrip the skies speed, scarce in your vision I will ne'er have striven, as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need, or let me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud, I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of ours had chained and bound, one true like thee, tameless and sweet and proud. Make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies would take from both a deep, a tumbled tone. Sweet thou in sadness, be thou spirit fierce. My spirits, be thou me impetuous one. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe, like withered leaves to quicken a new birth, and by the incantation of these birds, scatter as from an unextinguished heart, ashes and sparks my words among mankind, be through my lips to unawakened earth, the trumpets of a prophecy of wind, if winter comes consumed be far behind. 19. Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. My heart aches and a drowsy numbness pains my sense as low of hemlock I have drunk, all empty, some thought opiates to the dreams. 1 minute passed and deathful had sunk. 'Tis not to envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thy happiness, that thou let wind dry up the trees in some melodious part of beeching green and shadows numberless, singers of summer in full salty ease, or for a draught of vintage that hath been cool a long age in the deep delf earth, tasting the flora and the country green, dance and a provençal sun and sunburn mirth, or for a beaker from warm south, full of the true, the bashful hypocrite, with beady bubbles speaking at the burnt and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim, fade far away, dissolve and quite forget, while thou among the leaves hast never known the weariness, the fever, and the fret. Here where men sit and hear each other groan, where poesy shakes the few sad last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre sing and dies, where but to sing is to be full of sorrow, and leaden eye despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pardon beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not chariot by Bacchus and his parts, but on the viewless wings of policy. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee tender is the night, and happy the cream moon is on her throne, cast around by all her starry face. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blow, through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, not what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but in the bone darkness scarce each sweet, wherewith the seasonable moth endows the grass, the thickets, and the fruit tree well, while hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast veiling violets cover up in leaves, and make maze out the stride, the coming maxwell forward doing one, the murmur hung to fly on summer eves. Darkening I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with its footstep, call him soft name in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seemed it wish to die, to seize upon the midnight with no pain, while thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have years in vain, to thy high requiem become a star. Thou wast not born for that immortal birth, no hungry generation tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown, perhaps the self-same sound that found a path through the sad harvard woods when seek for home. She stood in tears amid the alien calm, the same that ofttimes had charmed magic casement opening on the foam of palaces in fairylands for long, the very work is like a bell to turn me back from thee to my sole self. Adieu, the fancy cannot choose so well, as she is fain to do, deceiving elf. Adieu, adieu, like plaintive anthem face, past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis very deep in the next valley grace. What is a vision or waking dream? Fled is like music, do I wake or sleep? 20. I remember, by Thomas Hood. I remember, the house where I was born, the little window where the sun came peeping in as morn. He never came a wink too soon, nor brought too long a day, but now I often wish the night had brought my breath away. I remember, the roses, red and white, the violets and the lily cups, those flowers made of light. The lilacs were robin bells, and where my brother sat, the laburnum on his birthday, the tree is living yet. I remember, where I was used to sweat, and so the air must wash as fresh, two swallows on the wing. My spirit flew in feathers then, that is so heavy now, and summer pools could hardly cool the fever on my brow. I remember, the fir trees dark and high. I used to think their slender tops were close against the sky. It was a childish ignorance, but now 'tis little joy to know I am further up from heaven than when I was a boy. 21. Sunlight from the Prodigy is 14 by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. If thou must love me, let it be for naught, except for love's sake only. Do not say, I love her for her smile, her look, her way of speaking gently, for a check of thought that falls in love with mine, and certes brought a sense of pleasant ease on such a day. For these things in themselves, beloved, may be changed or changed for thee, and love so wrought may be unwrought. So neither love me for thy own dear pity's wiping my cheeks dry. A creature might forget to weep who bore thy comfort long and lose thy love thereby. But love me for love's sake, that evermore thou mayst love on, so love's eternity. 22. A Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Tell me not in mournful numbers that is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead like slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Thus thou art, to dust returnest. Were not spoken of the soul, not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destiny and our way, but to act that each tomorrow find us farther than today. Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave. In the war's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not like dumb-driven cattle, be a hero in the strife. Trust no future, our present, let the dead past bury exact acts in the living present, heart within and God overhead. Lives of great men, all we miners, we can make our lives sublime, and departing leave behind us footprints on the sands of time, footprints that perhaps another sailing or like sorrow man, and forlorn and shipwrecked brothers, things shall take heart again. Let us then be up and doing, with the heart for any face, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait. 23. A Dry at Gettysburg by Abraham Lincoln. 47 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty, and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on the great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives, that our nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this, but in a larger sense we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggle here have consecrated far above our poor power to add or to detract. The world will little know nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from this honored day we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that this day shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people by the people shall not perish from of the people by the people for the people shall not perish from the earth. 24. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. In short, the heavy In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisy authority insisted on its being received for good or for evil in a superlative degree and comparison only. 25. I Died for Beauty by Emily Dickinson. I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusting in the tomb when one who died for truth was then. He entered drawing room. He questioned softly why I feel. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. The true are one. He brethren are, he said, and so as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the mouths had reached our lips and covered up our names. 26. I Look into My Glass by Thomas Hardy. I look into my glass and view my wasting skin, and say, would God it came to pass, my heart has drunk a thing. When I under stress, by hearts grown close to me, could lonely wait my endless rest with equanimity. But time to make me grieve, past still this part abide, and shake the fragile friend abyss with throbbings of new time. 27. Stray Birds by Rabindranath Tagore. Stray birds of summer come to my window to sing and fly away, and yellow leaves of autumn, which have no sound, flutter and fall there with a sigh. If you shed tears when you miss the sun, you also miss the stars. What language is night or sea? The language of eternal question. The language is thy answer, O sky, the language of eternal silence. Listen, my heart, to the whispers of the war with which it makes love to you. They throw their shadows before them, who carry their lantern on their back. The act exists is a perpetual surprise, which is life. Its own mornings are new surprise to God. The bird wishes it were cloud, the cloud wishes it were bird. Do not blame your food because you have no appetite. The fish in the water is silent, the animal on the earth is noisy. The bird in the air is singing, but man has in him the silence of the sea, the noise of the earth, and the music of the air. God finds himself by creating. Life is given to us, we earn us by giving it. We come nearest to the grass when we are grass in humanity. Tiny grass you step are small, but you possess the earth under your tread. The infant flower opens its bird and cries. Dear world, please do not fade. God grows weary of great kingdom, but never little flowers. We read the road round and say that it deceives us. You are the big drop of dew under the lotus leaf. I am the smaller one on its upper side. Say the dewdrop to the lake. Be still, my heart, these great trees are pearls. Do not linger to gather flowers to keep them, but walk on, for flowers will keep themselves blooming all your way. 28. A Call to America by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. In my opinion, the Indian struggle for freedom bears in its consequences not only upon India and England, but upon the whole world. It contains one phase of the human race. It represents one of the most ancient civilizations. It has tradition handed down from tens of thousands of years, some of which, through the astonishment of the world, remain intact. No doubt the ravages of time have affected the purity of that civilization, as they have that of many other cultures and many institutions. If India is to revive the glory of her ancient past, she can only do so when she attends for freedom. The reason for the struggle, having drawn the attention of the world, I know does not lie in the fact that we Indians are fighting for our liberty, but in the fact that means adopted by us for attaining that liberty are unique and, as far as history shows us, have not been adopted by any other people of whom we have any record. The means adopted are not violence, not bloodshed, not diplomacy, as one understands it nowadays, but they are purely and simply truth and non-violence. No wonder that the attention of the world is directed toward this attempt to the successful brothers' revolution. Hitherto nations have fought in the manner of the brutes. They have wreaked vengeance upon those whom they have considered to be their enemies. We find in certain national anthems adopted by great nations that they contain imprecation upon the so-called enemy. They have vowed destruction and have not hesitated to take the name of God and seek divine assistance for the destruction of the enemy. We in India have endeavored to reverse the process. We feel that the law that governs brute creation is not the law that should guide the human race. That law is inconsistent with human dignity. I personally would wait, if need be, for ages rather than seek to attain the freedom of my country through bloody means. I feel in the innermost of my heart, after a political extending over an unbroken period of close upon 35 years, that the world is sick unto death of blood spilling. The world is seeking a way out, and I flatter myself with the belief that perhaps it would be the privilege of the ancient land of India to show the way out to the hungering world. 29. Chinese and Western Civilization Contract by Bertrand Russell. There is a person in China, a close contact between our civilization and that which is native to a celestial empire. It is still a doubtful question whether this contact will bring a new civilization better than either of its parents, or whether it will merely destroy the native culture and replace it by that of America. Contacts between different civilizations have often in the past proved to be landmarks in human progress. Wisdom from Egypt, Rome from Greece, the heirs from the Roman Empire, medieval Europe from the heirs, and Renaissance Europe from the Byzantines. In many of these cases, the pupils proved better than their masters. In the case of China, if we regard the Chinese as the pupils, this may be the case again. In fact, we have quite as much to learn from them as they from us, but there is far less chance of our learning it. If I treat the Chinese as the pupils, it is only because I feel. In the case of China, if we regard the Chinese as the pupils, this may be the case again. In fact, we have quite as much to learn from them as they from us. But there is far less chance of our learning it. If I treat the Chinese as our pupils rather than vice versa, it is only because I feel we are unteachable. Western Europe and America have a practically homogeneous mental life, which I show three sources. 1. Greek culture, 2. Jewish religion and ethics, 3. Modern industrialism, which itself is an outcome of modern science. We may take Plato, the Old Testament, and Galileo as representing these three elements, which have remained singularly separable down to the present day from the Greeks which derive literature and the art, philosophy, and pure mathematics. Also, the more urban portions of our social outlook, from the Jews which derive fanatical belief, which is Franco faith, moral fervor, with the conceptions in religion's intolerance, and some part of our naturalism, from science pure industrialism, which derive power and the sense of power, the belief that we are as gods and may justly be the arbiters of life and death, for unscientific races which derive also the empirical method by which almost all your knowledge has been acquired. These three elements, I think, account for most of our mentality. When I went to China, I went to teach, but every day that I stayed, I thought less of what I had to teach them and more of what I had to learn from them. Among Europeans who had lived a long time in China, I found this attitude not uncommon, but among those who stay short or who go only to make money, it is sadly rare. It is rare because the Chinese do not excel in the things we really value, military prowess and industrial enterprise, but those who value wisdom or beauty, or even the simple enjoyment of life, will find more of these things in China than in the destructive and jubilant West, and will be happy to live with such things I value. I wish I could hope that China, in return for our scientific knowledge, may give us something of a large tolerance and contemplative peace of mind. 30. The Ideal Democracy by Carl O. Becker. All human institutions, we are told, have their ideal forms laid away in heaven, and we do not need to be told that the actual institution conform but indifferently to this ideal counterpart. It would be possible then to define democracy either in terms of the ideals or in terms of the real form, to define it as government of the people, by the people, for the people, or to define it as government of the people by the politicians, for whatever pressure groups can get their interests taken care of. But a historian destroyed, I am naturally disposed to be satisfied with the meaning which, in the history of politics, men have commonly attributed to the word, a meaning needless to say, which derived partly from the experience and partly from the aspiration of mankind. So we got the term democracy refers primarily to a form of government, and it has always meant government by the many, as opposed to government by the one, government by the people as opposed to government by a tyrant, a dictator, or an absolute monarch. This is the most general meaning of the word as men have commonly understood it. 31. The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Two words diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, toward its bend in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair. And having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted well, though as for that the path seemed there, and wondered really about the same, and both that morning equally late, in leaves no step had trodden black, oh I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with the sign. Some were ages and ages hence, two were diverged in a war, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. 32. Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire, but if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. 33. Report the Miracle of Dunkirk by Winston Churchill. I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and if the best arrangements are made as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our Iceland home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary for years, if necessary alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. That is the resolve of His Majesty's governments, every man of them. That is the world of parliaments and the nation, the British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in the cause and in their need. Will defend to the death in the native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the honor of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo, and all the odious apparatus of Nazi rule, we shall not flag or fail, we shall go on to the end, we shall fight in France, we shall fight on the seas and oceans, we shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air, we shall defend our Iceland, whether the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the street, we shall fight in the hills, we shall never surrender. And even if, which I do not for a moment believe, this Iceland or a large part of it were subjugated and starving, then an empire beyond the seas, armed and guarded by the British fleet, will carry on the struggle until, in God's good time, the new world, with all its power and might, start forth to the rescue and the liberation of the old. 34. I resolved to become a jungle doctor by a Weiser on October 13, 1905, a Friday. A drop into a letter box in the Avenue de la Grande Armée in Paris. Letters to my parents and to some of my most intimate acquaintances, telling them that at the beginning of the winter term I shall enter myself as a medical student in order to go later on to Equatorial Africa as a doctor. The plan which I meant now to put into execution had been in my mind for a long time, having been conceived so long ago as my student days. It struck me as incomprehensible that I should be allowed to lead such a happy life, while I saw so many people around me wrestling with care and suffering. Even as cool I had felt stirred whenever I got a glimpse of the miserable home surroundings of some of my schoolfellows, and compared them with the absolutely ideal conditions in which we children of the parsonage at Gunsbach live, while at the university and enjoying the happiness of being able to study and even to produce some results in science and art. I could not help thinking continually of others who were denied the happiness by the material circumstances of their health. Then one brilliant summer morning, I settled with myself before I got up that I would consider myself justified in living till I was 30 for science and arts, in order to devote myself from that time forward to the direct service of humanity. Many times already have I tried to settle what meaning they hidden for me in the saying of Jesus, whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever shall lose his life for my sake and the gospel shall save it. Now the answer was found. In addition to the outward, I now had inward happiness. 35. Fog by Carl Sandburg. The fog comes on little Cadby. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. 36. The Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler. The Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler. I see in place of that empty figment of one linear history, which can only be kept up by shutting one side 36. The Decline of the West by Oswald Spengler. I see in place of that empty figments of one linear history which can only be kept up by shutting one's eyes to the overwhelming multitude of the facts, the drama of a number of mighty cultures, each spring with primitive strength from the soil of a mother region, to which is remained fully bound. Throughout its whole life cycle, each stem being material, is mankind in its own image, is having its own idea, its own passions, its own life, will and feeling its own death. Here indeed are colors, light movements that no intellectual eye has yet discovered. Here the cultures, peoples, languages, true scars, landscapes, bloom and age, as the oaks and the stone pines, the blossoms, twigs and leaves, but there is no age in mankind. Each culture had its own new possibility of self-expression, which arise, ripen, decay, and never return. There is not one sculpture, one painting, one mathematics, one physics, but many, each in its deepest essence different from the others, each limited in duration and self-contained. Just as each species of plant had its peculiar blossom of fruits, its special type of growth and decline, these cultures sublimated life essence, grow with the same superb endlessness as the flowers of the field. They belong like the plants and the animals to the living nature of Goethe and not to the dead nature of Newton. I see what history as a picture of endless formations and transformations. The transformations of the marvelous waxing and waning of organic forms. The professional historian, on the contrary, sees it as a sort of taper, industriously adding on to itself one epoch after another. Is the inward and outward fulfillment, the finality that awaits every living culture. Is the purpose of all the history declines, amongst them that decline of the classical, which we know so well and fully, and another decline entirely comparable to its in course and duration, which will occupy the first centuries of the coming millennium. But it's already, and sensible in and around us today. The decline of the West every culture passes through, the age phases of the individual man, each had its childhood, youth, manhood, and old age. 37. John MacArthur's prayer for his son by August MacArthur. Build me a son of those who will be strong enough to know when he is weak, and brave enough to face himself when he is afraid, one who will be proud and unbending in honest defeat, and humble and gentle in victory. Build me a son whose wishes Build me a son whose wishes will not take the place of these, a son who will know thee, and that to know himself is the foundation stone of knowledge. Lead him, I pray, not in the paths of ease and comfort, but under the stress and spur of difficulties and challenge. Yet that he learn to stand up in the storm, yet that he learn compassion for loss fulfilled. Build me a son whose heart will be clear, whose goal will be high, a son who will master himself before he seeks to master other men. One who will reach into the future, yet never forget the past, and after all these things are his, add, I pray, in a sense of humor, so that he may always be serious, yet never take himself too seriously. Give him humility, so that he may always remember the simplicity of true greatness, the open mind of true wisdom, and the meekness of true strength. Then I, his father, would dare to whisper, I have not lived in vain. 38. 3 Days to See by Helen Keller. How would it possible, I ask myself, to walk for an hour through the woods and see nothing worthy of note? I who cannot see find hundreds of things to interest me through mere touch. I feel the delicate symmetry of a leaf. I pass my hands lovingly about the smooth skin of a silver birch, of a rough shaggy bark of a pine. In the spring I touch the branches of trees hopefully in search of a bird, the first sign of awakening. Nature after her winter sleep, I feel the delightful, velvety texture of a flower, and discover its remarkable convolutions, and something of the miracle of nature is revealed to me. Occasionally, if I am very fortunate, I place my hand gently on a small tree, and feel the happy quiver of a bird in full song. I am delighted to have the cool waters of a brook rush through my open fingers. To me, a large carpet of pine needles or spongy grass is more welcome than the most luxurious Persian rug. To me, the page and the seasons is a thrilling and unending drama, the action of which streams through my fingertips. At times my heart cries out with longing to see all these things. If I can get so much pleasure from mere touch, how much more beauty must be revealed by sight. Yet those who have eyes apparently see little. The panorama of color and action which fill the world is taken for granted. is taken for granted. is taken for granted. It is human perhaps to appreciate little that which we have, and to long for that which we have not, but it is a great pity that in the world of light the gift of sight is used only as a mere convenience, rather than as a means of adding tonics to life. 39. Four Freedoms by Franklin D. Roosevelt. In the future days which we seek to make secure, we look forward to a world founded upon four essential human freedom. The first is freedom of speech and expression, everywhere in the world. The second is freedom of every person to worship God in his own way everywhere in the world. The third is freedom from wants, which translated into world terms means economic understandings which will secure to every nation a healthy peacetime life for its inhabitants everywhere in the world. The fourth is freedom from fear, which translated into world terms means a worldwide reduction of armaments to such a point and in such a thorough fashion that no nation would be in a position to commit an act of physical aggression against any neighbor anywhere in the world. Anywhere in the world that is no vision of a distant millennium. It is a definite basis for a kind of world attainable in our own time and generation. That kind of world is the very antithesis of the so-called New Order of tyranny, which the dictators seek to create with the crush of a bomb. To that new order with the cause, the greater conception, the more order, a good society is able to face schemes of world domination and four revolutions alike without fear. Since the beginning of American history, we have been engaged in change, in a perpetual peaceful revolution, a revolution which goes on steadily, quietly adjusting itself to changing conditions, without the concentration camp or the quicklime in the ditch. The world order which we seek is the cooperation of free countries working together in a friendly, civilized society. This nation has placed its destiny in the hands and heads and hearts of its millions of free men and women, and is faith in freedom under the guidance of God. Freedom means the supremacy of human rights everywhere. Our support goes to those who struggle to gain those rights or keep them. Our strength is in our unity of purpose. To that high concept there can be no end save victory. 40. Children by Colonel Gabon. And a woman who had a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." And he said, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you, for life goes not backward, nor tarry with yesterday. You are the bones from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth." For the archer seeks the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far, that your bending in the archer's hand before gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. 41. I Believe by Albert Einstein. Strange is our situation here upon earth. Each of us comes for a short visit, not knowing why, yet sometimes seeming to divine purpose. From the standpoint of daily life, however, there is one thing we do know, that man is here for the sake of other men. Above all, for those upon whose smile and well-being our own happiness depends, and also for the countless unknown souls with whose fates we are connected by a bond of sympathy. Many times a day I realize how much my own outer and inner life is built upon the labors of my fellow men, both living and dead, and how earnestly I must exert myself in order to give in return as much as I have received. My peace of mind is often troubled by a depressing sense that I have brought too heavily from the work of other men. I do not believe we can have any freedom at all in the philosophical sense, for we act not only under external compulsion, but also by inner necessity. To an understand, a man can surely do what he wills to do, but he cannot determine what he wills. Impressed itself upon me in youth, and has always consoled me when I have witnessed or suffered life's hardships. This conviction is a perpetual breeder of tolerance, for it does not allow us to take ourselves or others too seriously. It makes rather for a sense of humor to ponder interminably over the reason for one's own existence. or the meaning of life in general seems to me, from an attractive point of view, to be sure folly, and yet everyone holds certain ideals by which he guides his aspiration and his judgments. The ideals which have always shone before me and fill me with the joy of living are goodness, beauty, and truth. To make a goal of comfort or happiness has never appealed to me. A system of ethics beyond this basis would be sufficient only for her cattle. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer pass to wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as day his eyes are closed. The insight into the mystery of life, coupled though it be with fear, has also given rise to religion. To know that what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting himself as the highest wisdom, and the most radiant beauty which our faculty can comprehend only in their most primitive forms. This knowledge, this feeling, is at the center of true religiousness. In this sense, and in this sense only, I belong in the ranks of devoutly religious men. 42. The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Good luck, old man, good luck, the old man said. He fitted the rough rushings of the oars onto the pins, and then leaning forward against the thrust of the blades in the water, he began to throw out of the harbor in the dark. There were other boats from the other beaches going out to sea, and the hermit heard the dip and push of the oars, even though he could not see them. Now the moon was below the hills. Sometimes someone would speak in a boat, but most of the boats were silent except for the dip of the oars. They spread apart after they were out of the mouth of the harbor, and each one headed for the part of the ocean where he hoped to find fish. The old man knew he was going far out, and he left the smell of the land behind, and rode out into the clean early morning smell of the ocean. In the dark the old man could feel the morning coming, and as he rode he heard a trembling sound, as flying fish left the water, and the hissing that the stiff windsmen that they stole away in the darkness. He was very fond of flying fish, as they were his principal friends on the ocean. He was sorry for the birds, especially the small delicate dark trim that were always fine and looking. And almost never finding, and he thought the birds have a harder life than we do, except for rubber birds and the heavy strong ones. Why did they make birds so delicate and fine? As those sea swallows when the ocean can be so cool. She is kind and very beautiful, but she can be so cool and it comes so suddenly. And such birds that fly, dipping and hunting, with a small safe oasis, are meant too delicately for the sea. 43. Gone with the Wind by Marcus Mitchell. The sun was now below the horizon, and the red glow at the rim of the world fading into pink. The sky above turned slowly from azure to a delicate blue-green of a robin's egg, and the unearthly stillness of rural twilight came stealthy down about her. Further with dimness quite over the countryside. The red froze and the gush red road lost their magical blood color and became plain brown earth. Across the road in the pasture, the horses, mules, and cows stood quietly with heads over the split-rail fence, waiting to be driven to the stable and supper. They did not like the dark shade of thickets hedging the pasture creek, and they twitched their ears at scarlet, as if appreciative of human companionship. In the strange half-light, the tall pines of the river swamp, so warmly green in the sunshine, were black against the pastel sky. An impenetrable row of black giants hiding the slow yellow water at their feet. On a hill across the river, the tall white chimneys of the works home faded gradually into the darkness of the thick oaks surrounding them, and only far-off pinpoint of supperland showed that the house was here. The warm damp balminess of spring encompassed her swiftly with the moist smells of new ploughed earth, and all the fresh green things pushing up to the air. Sunset and spring and new fresh greenery were no miracle to Scarlet. Their beauty she accepted as casually as the air should breathe and the water should drink, for she had never consciously seen beauty in anything but women's faces, horses, soft dresses, and like tangible things. Yet the serene half-light over Taro's white-capped acres brought a measure of pride to her disturbed mind. She loved this land so much, without even knowing she loved it. Loved it as she loved her mother's face under the lamp at prayer time. 44. The Art of Scientific Investigation by William Ivy Burridge. Albert Einstein distinguishes three types of research workers: those who take up science because it offers them an opportunity to exercise the particular talent, and who excel in it, as an athlete enjoys exercising his powers; those who regard it as a means of livelihood, and who, but for circumstances, might have become successful businessmen; and lastly, the true devotees who are rare, but make a contribution of knowledge out of proportion to their numbers. Some psychologists consider that man's best work is usually done under adversity, and that mental stress and even physical pain may act as a mental stimulant. Many prominent men have suffered from psychological troubles and various difficulties, but for which perhaps they would never have put forward the effort required to excel. The scientist seldom gets a large monetary reward for his labors, so he should be freely granted any just fame arising from his work. But the greatest reward is the thrill of discovery. As many scientists attest, it is one of the greatest joys the life has to offer. It gives a tremendous emotional uplift and great sense of well-being and satisfaction. Not only factual discoveries, but a sudden realization of a generalization can give the same feeling of exhilaration. As Prince Kropotkin wrote, he who has once in his life experienced this joy of scientific creation will never forget it. 45. Inaugural Address by John F. Kennedy. In your hands, my fellow citizens, small name in mine, will rest the final success or failure of our cause. Since this country was founded, each generation of Americans has been summoned to give testimony to its national loyalty. The graves of young Americans who answered the call to serve us around the globe. Now the trumpet summons us again, not as a call to bear arms, though arms we need, not as a call to battle, though in battle we are, but a call to bear the burden of a long childlike struggle, year in and year out, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, a struggle against the common enemies of men, tyranny, poverty, disease, and war itself. Can we forge against these enemies a grand and global alliance, north and south, east and west, that can assure a more fruitful life for all mankind? With you joining in that historic efforts, in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe. I welcome it. I do not believe we can have. I do not believe that any of us will exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will last our country and all who serve it, and the growth from that fight can truly last the world. And so, my fellow American, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America will do for you, but what together we can do for the freedom of men. Finally, whether you are citizen of America or citizen of the world, ask of us the same high standards of strength and sacrifice which we ask of you. With a good conscience, our only sure reward, with history the final judge of our deeds, let us go forth to lead the land we love, asking his blessing and his help, but knowing that here on earth God's work must truly be our own. 46. A Theory of Justice by John Rawls. Justice is the first virtue of social institutions, as truth is of system of thought. As truth is of system of thought, the theory, however elegant and economical, must be rejected or revised if it is untrue. Likewise, those institutions, no matter how efficient and well arranged, must be reformed or abolished if they are unjust. Each person possesses an inviolability, founded on justice that even the welfare of society as a whole cannot override. For this reason, justice denies that the loss of freedom for some is made right by a greater good share by others. It does not allow us that sacrifices imposed on a few are outweighed by a larger sum, or advantage enjoyed by many. Therefore, in a just society, the liberties of equal citizenship are taken as settled. The rights secured by justice are not subject to political bargaining or to calculus social interests. The only thing that permits us to acquiesce in a erroneous theory is the lack of a better one. Analogously, an injustice is tolerable only when it is necessary to avoid an even greater injustice. Being first virtues of human activities, truth and justice are uncompromising. These perceptions seem to express our intuitive conviction of the primacy of justice. No doubt they are expressed too strongly. In any event, I wish to inquire whether these contentions or others similar to them are sound, and if so, how they can be accounted for. To this end, it is necessary to work out a theory of justice, in the light of which the assertion can be interpreted and assessed. 47. I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day This nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold this truth to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a desert state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of the character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious visits, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of intercession and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, and rough places will be made plain, and crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. 48. Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Buck. It was morning, and the new sun sparkled gold across the ripples of a gentle sea. A mile from shore, a fishing boat chumped the water, and the word for breakfast brought flags through the air, till a crowd of 1,000 seagulls came to dodge and fight for bits of food. It was another busy day beginning, but way out alone, all by himself beyond boat and shore, Jonathan Livingston Seagull was practicing. 100 feet in the sky, he lowered his wet feet, lifted his beak, and strained to hold a painful, hard, twisting curve through his wings. The curve meant that he would fly slowly, and now he slowed until the wind, with a whisper in his face, until the ocean stood still beneath him. He narrowed his eyes in fierce concentration, and his breath forced one single more inch of curve. Then his feathers rifled, he stalled and fell. Seagulls, as you know, never falter, never stall. To stall in the air is for them disgrace, and it is dishonor. But Jonathan Livingston Seagull, out of shame, stretching his wings again, in that trembling, hard curve, slowing, and slowing once more, was no ordinary bird, more skilled than brother, to learn more than the simplest flight of flight, how to get from shore to food and back again. For most gold, it was not flying that mattered, but eating. For this gold, though, it was not eating that mattered, but flight. More than anything else, Jonathan Livingston Seagull loved to find. This kind of thinking, he found, is not a way to make oneself popular with other birds. Even his friend was dismayed. Jonathan spent whole days alone, making hundreds of low-level glides, experimenting. 49 lyrics. What morning has spoken? Morning has spoken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first birds. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for the spring, fresh from the wood, sweet the rain's new fall, sunlight from heaven, like the first dewfall, like the first burst. Praise for the spring, fresh from the wall, sweet the rain's new fall, sunlight from heaven, like the first dewfall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the waste garden, strong in completeness where his feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one night Eden saw pray. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day. True Edelweiss, 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 every morning you greet me, small and white, clean and bright. You look happy to meet me. Blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. Edelweiss, Edelweiss, bless my home then forever. 3. Sunrise, sunset, it is the little girl I carry, it is the little boy I play. I don't remember growing older. When did she get to be a beauty? When did he grow to be so tall? Wasn't it yesterday when they were small? Sunrise, sunset, swiftly for the days, seedlings turn overnight to sunflowers, blossoming even as we gaze. Sunrise, sunset, swiftly by the years, one season following another, laden with happiness and tears. What words of wisdom can I give them? How can I help to ease their way? Now they must learn from one another day by day. They look so natural together, just like two newlyweds should be. Is that a kind of peace and stood for me? 4. Silver threads among the gold. Darling, I am growing old. Silver threads among the gold shine upon my brow today. Life is fading fast away. But my darling, you will be always young and fair to me. Yes, my darling, you will be always young and fair to me. When your hair is silver white and your cheeks no longer bright with the roses of the May, I will kiss your lips and say, oh my darling, my alone, you have never older grown. Yes, my darling, my alone, you have never older grown. fight to serve with love. Those cruel girl days of telling tales and biting nails are gone, but in my mind, I know they will still live on and on. But how do you think someone who has taken you from crayons to fulfill? It isn't easy, but I try. If you went in the sky, I'd ride across the sky in letters that will soar 1,000 feet high to serve with love. The time has come for closing books, and long the books must end. And as I live, I know that I am leaving my best friend, a friend who taught me right from wrong and weak from strong. That's a lot to learn. What can I give you in return? If you went to the moon, I will try out and make a star, but I would rather you let me give my heart to serve with love.